What's up, my wizards? It's Dev. Mtg, we like magic, and we got an interesting topic on the docket today. We're going to talk about the top 20 cards, that's a lot of cards, that get better after rotation. Some of these might be sleepers, some of them might already be good, and I just think they get better. There might be stuff coming in that makes them better, there might be stuff going out that was keeping them down, but either way, these are all the cards that I think get a little bit better, if not a lot better, once rotation hits. Well, it wouldn't be one of my lists without an honorable mention, and I really wanted to sneak mechanized production onto the list somewhere, so here it is. A lot of people are excited about this. In conjunction with treasure tokens, we lose clues, but if treasure tokens are easier to make than clues, then mechanized production just got a lot better, and it seems like it would go in the, Revel in Riches deck, as well as, another alternate win condition. So I like the idea of mech production going into the next standard, but I'm not too sure that it's going to be the best card ever. But still, I at least wanted it to be somewhere in this video, so here you go. Another card that I just kind of want to be on the list somewhere is Shade Plunder, so I'll put it at number 20. Not the most impactful thing ever, but I do want to point out that it's a pre-existing pirate that can put extra +1/+1 counters on stuff, or maybe give you extra energy if that's what you're doing, But just the fact that it's a 2-drop pirate that flies and has 2 power, it's decent stats right there. So if we really, really need 2-drops in that pirate's deck, we have one that came pre-packaged way before Ixalan. So I at least want to remind people this card exists, and it might get a little bit better with Pirate Tribal. Just kind of makes sense in my mind. Number 19 is Neheb the Eternal, and there's an 80% chance that Neheb continues to do absolutely nothing after rotation, but I still think he looks a little bit more attractive in Ixalan Standard, because there's going to be a lot of 7 and 8 mana cards, at least from what we've seen so far, that we kind of want to get to, and Neheb would be at least one option, and he's a threat that survives Hour of Devastation, so I think Neheb's looking pretty slick right now. I don't think he's going to be the best thing in the world, but at the same time, I think that Neheb is looking a little bit better and will probably be tried around brewing season. Whether or not he survives brewing season and actually makes it into real faux shiz Ixalan Standard, whole other story, but I at least think people are going to be trying him. My number 18 is Crested Sun Mare, another 5-drop, and we'll see another one right after this. Some 5-drops to start the list off here, but I think the Crested Sun Mare is looking a little decent. We lose Lone Rider, there's some stuff that rotates that worked pretty well with Crested, but at the same time, one of the mechanics of vampires in Ixalan is going to be gaining you life. Wizards have already stated that. So if we get a glut of decent life gain cards, then I think it stands to reason that the horse gets a little bit better. So look out for him, again, depending on what we see. Number 17 is Vertebras Gearhulk for a couple of reasons. First of all, the general reason is because, I think that the format will get slightly more mid-range. Again, I think that we could lose half a step in the speed level of this format. Maybe not a whole step, but at least half a step. And in that kind of environment, Vertebras Gearhulk looks way, way better, first and foremost. But there's also the sort of niche reason that, Herald of Secret Streams with Vertebras Gearhulk looks great. At least on a casual or maybe even a semi-budget level, you'll have to buy the Gear Hulks. But still, putting together the Herald and the Hulk is going to lead to a huge combat swing where you just unblocked with 4 different guys. Looks like a pretty sweet idea to try at least. And we're going to do it. We're definitely going to do that. My number 16 is a little bit broad, but bear with me. I think that cards with Improvise could just generally get better here. We lose clues, but don't have the blues about losing the clues. We've got treasure tokens now, and even though they don't work quite as well as I want them to with Improvise, you can still either tap them for Improvise or you can tap them and sack them for mana. So if they're easier to make than clues, again, that line, then Improvise cards get a little bit better. I think Herald of Anguish, if it gets any easier to cheat out, is going to be a really good card in the upcoming standard. And things like Metallic Rebuke, already a decent card, could get even better. Same thing with Reverse Engineer. There's a few of these. I don't think that niche improvised cards get much better, but some of these already decent heavy hitter cards that are just looking for an extra step to be able to be involved in standard, treasure tokens might be the step that they need. But number 15 is Nissa, Steward of Elements. She hasn't seen much play, but she has seen some play already. So I don't think the card is bad or anything, but there's definitely a Simic deck on the horizon. It looks like a pretty aggro deck. Simic Merfolk is what it's looking like, but a lot of times we've seen Nissa as sort of a ramp target. You try to, at least so far, you try to get that X up to a relatively big number. But what if she was instead a curve topper? you know, X equals 3, X equals 4 in a sort of aggro-y deck. She would still be able to rip like every creature off the top of your library and put it into play. She'd get your card advantage aside from that. She'd scry for you, or she could be like the biggest creatures in your deck, 2/5/5s, you know. Just so much that you could do with Nissa, even in an aggro deck as a curve topper. So if Cynic or even possibly Bant, I think that's looking like it might actually come together, our decks, then I think Nissa gets a little bit better, and that seems obvious. But number 14 is New Perspectives, mostly because the New Perspectives deck doesn't lose anything to rotation. It's pretty much the same exact deck in the next standard. And again, if we lose even just a little bit of a step, then New Perspectives can get to turn 6. And if that happens, then it can be game over, demonstrably. New Perspectives threatened to be a deck in the last standard, you know? And it did fall a little bit short, but again, only a little bit short. If the next standard falls behind by even just half of a turn, the New Perspectives does have a chance. And again, it helps that it loses literally 0 pieces. So look out for New Perspectives. It might finally be a real deck. Well, number 13 is Godfarah's Gift, believe it or not. Now, despite all the hate that exists in the format for this deck, even currently, you know, we've got Scavenger Grounds getting played in main decks, a Braid getting played in main decks, and Crook of Condemnation is in like every sideboard. But the deck still sees some play, the Blue-White Godfarah's Gift deck. And that deck gets better targets going into the next standard. You know, I think Goring Ceratops looks like a really sweet target for Godfarah's Gift. It actually gets better when you gift it into play. That's amazing. And like Angar's Marauders hasn't seen a whole lot of like looks so far in spoiler season, but if you can get it into play with the Godfarah's Gift, it's got the same power toughness, and it's a Furnace of Wrath for you that you didn't have to pay 7 mana for. So I think that's a sweet target too. Just the fact that it gets awesome new targets might mean that Godfarah's Gift is real. My number 12 is Metalwork Colossus. Now, this is another example of a deck that's already real and could get realer. You know, Grixis Colossus has been posting some results here and there. The deck does not lose that many pieces, truth be told, to rotation. And it gains some new stuff, too. It gets treasure tokens, which will help you cast your Colossus. Just tap and sack them. Or it'll help you get your Colossus back from the graveyard. Sort of a stand-in for clues in that way. So, really like the idea of treasure tokens with Metalwork Colossus. And in a format with a bunch of, like, 7-power dinosaurs at the top of the curve, the 10/10 is king. So I really think that a deck that's already a pretty good deck could get a lot better once rotation hits. Just look out for Colossus. My number 11 is Prowling Serpapard, believe it or not. A lot of people, myself included, are saying that this format looks a little bit more mid-rangey once Ixalan hits. But what that often means is that the format's actually going to end up being control-oriented. You know, control beats mid-range. So if we're in a mid-range format, control's looking good. But mid-range is going to have some pretty good tools to stop control decks. Not only Carnage Tyrant, which looks really amazing, can't wait to mess around with that, but Prowling Serpapard out of the sideboard too. Looks like it could just stop control decks cold. So I think Prowling Serpapard, if control is good, and control doesn't lose that much either, aside from like Wandering Fumarole, which is a kind of a big loss, honestly. But a lot of the pieces control already plays, it does not lose. So if control is still looking healthy after the format rotates, then Prowling Serpapard is obviously a good choice. But here we are in the top 10, and I've actually got a pretty surprising card to open it up. My number 10 is Sky Whaler's Shot. Now, somebody in the comments section the other day said this, and I couldn't agree more. Honestly, it was already on my list, but the more I think about it, the better it gets. You know, again, we're going to be in a format dominated by more powerful creatures, not only 7-power dinosaurs and stuff, but I think the format is gearing towards like 3 and 4 power creatures earlier and earlier. Turn 1 sometimes. We just saw a 1 green mana 3/3, and it's not going to be hard to get a turn 2 4-power guy either. So Sky Whaler's Shot is actually looking pretty decent to me because it's going to be able to take out a majority of creatures in the format. We lose some key removal already, and Sky Whaler's Shot might be able to move into that spot. It's a whole 3 mana, but it's splashable, it's instant speed, and it gives you a scry on top of all that. Some of the control decks are going to really want at least. So I think Sky Whaler's Shot is looking up. Depending on whatever removal we see in Ixalan, Sky Whaler's Shot might actually become not a top tier piece of removal, but at least a played piece of removal. My number 9 is Resilient Kenra, actually. Now, I just brought it up, but I'll bring it up again. We just saw a 1 mana 3/3, and we've just seen a 1 mana 2/2 in the last couple of days. So Resilient Kenra is looking better and better because if there is a stompy deck for real, actually for real in the format, it's going to want Resilient Kenra as a 2-drop every single time. So all I'm saying is look out for Resilient Kenra. you know, invest the whatever it is, 25 cents maybe into this card, because I've already got my playset. You know, if Stompy is a thing, and it definitely looks like we're gearing towards a mono green or even possibly Simic Stompy / Tempo thing, the Resilient Kinra is going to be a good card in that deck. And number 8, believe it or not, is Hazoret the Fervent, if only because Grasp of Darkness won't be around anymore. Not having to worry about Grasp when your opponent has 2 untapped black mana on your turn is going to make all the difference for Hazoret players. And we'll talk a little bit more in this video, in the next entry actually, about Ramunap Red and how I think it might adjust. I don't think it's going to be the same deck after rotation, but I don't think Hazoret gets any worse, if only because Grasp isn't going to be around anymore. That's going to be a huge difference. My number 7 is Soulscar Mage, if only because it replaces Falconwrath Gorger completely. A lot of decks will play a 2 of Soulscar Mage, you know, but it'll also play the whole 4 of Falconwrath. I think that losing Falconwrath Gorger is going to make somewhat of a difference. You know, Falconwrath allows that deck the greatest damage output in the early turns. It gives it another 4 of 1-drop, you know, which allows you, again, to play Hazoret quicker and just, like, get her to work as early as possible. So I think the loss of a 1-drop like Falconwrath is going to affect that deck, but it's going to make up for it by playing the entire complement, the whole playset of Soulscar Mage. So I think just by definition, the card gets a little bit better. And who knows? It might shape the way the deck is built. Maybe we see more pump spells at lower cost in that deck from now on. Who knows? But either way, I think Soulscar Mage is going to get better, period. My number 6 is Hour of Revelation. This one entirely because of treasure tokens. Now, the thing with treasure tokens in Hour of Revelation is that you determine how much you're going to pay for the spell before you actually pay any of the costs. So, if there's enough treasure tokens and other random stuff on the board to get to 10 permanents, well, then you only have to pay 3 for your Hour of Revelation, but you can sacrifice 3 of those treasure tokens and pay that 3 white mana. So that's pretty sweet. You'll have leftover mana, and if you've got more than 3 treasure tokens, they're going to get nuked anyway. You might as well sack them, and you'll have mana up after you destroy everything on the board, and you get the first chance to play a new permanent. So I think Hour of Revelation might actually be playable, depending, again, on how easy it is to make treasure tokens. I just really like that interaction. And yes, it does work that way, by the way. The Gatherer ruling on that with Hour of Revelation uses Ethereum cells from Tezzeret, and they're more or less interchangeable with treasure tokens. So it does work that way. If you've got treasure tokens enough plus random permanents to get to 10, it only costs you 3, and you can use those treasure tokens to cast it. Just that interaction, I think, makes Hour of Revelation worth taking a look at. My number 5 is Angel of Sanctions, actually. Now, there's a lot of white 5-drops that are vying for Archangel Avacyn's Sly. You know, I've already talked about Crested Sun Mare. There's Angel of Invention. There's Regal Caracal. But I think the best of the bunch is probably Angel of Sanctions, especially going into the next format. You know, she can't be Grasp of Darkness because Grasp of Darkness doesn't exist anymore. She can't be Fatal Push. She can't be Abraded. She can't be Harness Lightning. One of the only things you can do to her is, like, cut. From Cut to Ribbons. Or, I guess, like, Hour of Devastation could kill her. You know what I mean? But there's really not a whole lot of options to kill this thing in the next standard, you know? And it's a pretty decent body, you know? 3/4 flyer's not bad. Can, you know, essentially Oblivion Ring one of their huge dudes that they might be playing. I think we're going to see more huge dudes in the next format. So, I think Angel of Sanctions instantly becomes the premier white 5-drop in the format. It's already seeing some play, but I just think it's going to see even more once rotation happens. My number 4 is Ronis the Indomitable. Yeah, he's already seen play in some decks, but I definitely don't think he gets any worse. I do think he gets a little bit better. First of all, I've already talked about the reasons why. Reason 1, I think the format might get a half step slower, and that only stands to benefit a card as good as Ronis. You know, just even a half step is going to open up the format a lot to Ronis the Indomitable, so watch out for that. But another reason that I think he gets a little bit better is because we've got a bunch of creatures in the next standard that are looking to be pretty big early in the game. It's already very easy to get a 4-power guy on turn 2. Probably going to be even easier in the next standard, you know. We've got like 1-mana 3/3s. We've got a lot of 2-mana 4-power dudes. I just really don't see it being hard to get Ronis online. So all that considered, I really think Ronis is, you know, positioned very well. Let me just leave it at that. Now, I'll kick off the top 3 here with the Cycling Dual Lands at number 3. I think these definitely stand to get better. You know, we're still going to have Kaladesh Fast Lands, which is going to be great. Those are going to be a godsend. But we do lose, like, Battle for Zendikar lands, Tango lands, whatever. We lose, like, the Shadow Duels. We lose Creature lands. That's going to be horrible for a lot of decks. And so these cards are going to fill that vacuum fairly well, I think at least. You know, again, we'll still use fast lands, but these are going to get a little bit better, especially considering they work with the other cycle of dual lands that we'll see in Ixalan. The check lands, those are back, and these synergize fairly well with those. So I think these just get a lot better going into the next standard, if not because they're one of our only choices, but also because they synergize well with another duel that we're going to be sort of forced to play. Now, all the way up here at number 2, believe it or not, is Hour of Promise. I really, really believe in this card in the next standard, you know. We're trying to get to 8-mana things like Geshath and sometimes Nicol Bolas and stuff. I really want to get to Geshath, you guys. I'm already building 9 dinosaurs. The deck is ridiculous. I just can't wait to see what else is in the set. But anyway, calm down. And Hour of Promise is looking so beast in the next standard when we're trying to get to all these 7 and 8 mana options that look really, really attractive. But how do we do it? Hour of Promise is going to be a big part of that. I'm just really, really liking the way Hour of Promise is looking going into the next format. But finally, my number 1, we've made it, you guys, is not a mid-range card. I'm sure you've all noticed at this point that I keep hammering home the idea. I think the format gets at least a half step slower, meaning that a lot of these cards on the list so far have just been mid-range cards that have been waiting on their breakout moment. But not my number 1. This card only costs 2 mana, so after all that build-up, what is it? My number 1 is Metallic Mimic. Well, Tribal definitely stands to get better in the next set, regardless of what you're playing. There are definitely like artifacts and enchantments that help out Tribal strategies. The next set is solely focused, in some ways at least, on Tribal, whether it's merfolk or dinosaurs or pirates or whatever. And we've already got a few tribes that exist in Standard even before rotation. So, you know, a Tribal card that, like Metallic Mimic, just obviously looks to get even better than it already is. This card sees Commander play. This card sees Modern play. This card has seen Standard play for its entire lifespan, and I don't see it getting any worse going into a Standard that's focused on Tribal themes. So go ahead and pick up your Metallic Mimics. If you don't have your M&Ms yet, now is the time. I know they keep trending upwards, but I don't see them going down once Ixalan releases. You know, a lot of Tribal decks are going to want a good 2-drop, and Metallic Mimic will always be one of the best. So that's my list. I'm sure I missed some, though. So let me know down there in the comments what all cards didn't make my list that you really, really wanted to see on here, because I'm sure that there are a buttload of pet cards that people have that they really think have a chance in Ixalan. So really interested in that discussion. If there's anything that I missed, I'm all ears. But I'm tapped out for now. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed the video. That would make me happy. You can also sub if you're new, because there's already been a bunch of Ixalan spoilers. Check those out if you haven't seen them yet. But there's going to be a bunch more, like literally probably tomorrow. So make sure you sub if you're new. Hit the bell for the notifications. You can follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, and new Patreon thing. If you're not a patron yet, or even if you already are, this is going to be important to you. If you kick in even just $1 on Patreon, then I will let you help pick the first 5 decks that we do in the upcoming Standard. A lot of people are psyched about Ixalan Standard, and I'm going to let you guys vote, if you're patrons, on what decks we do first in that Standard. So if you want a voice in that, kick me $1 on Patreon, you can be a part of it. You can also check out my sponsor, Tcg Player. They've got a new Tcg Player App. I want to at least throw this out here for you real quick at the end of the video. They've got their new Tcg Player App 2.0. It's completely free to download, and it's super sweet. You just like scan cards into your phone, immediately get the price for them. Don't get sharked on trades. Price like a whole bunch of cards that are rotating. You want to get rid of them. Like, there's a lot of uses for this app, and it's only like one button to get to the trade-in screen once you scan in cards. So seriously, go download the app for free. Helps the channel, helps them, helps you, helps everybody. So do that stuff, and I will see you guys next time. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.